All right, the first thing that we're going to cover today is going to be building your contact list or account list inside of HubSpot and importing that list back into Orum. So these are going to be lists that we create, so there's not going to be tasks associated with them, just a group of the contacts that we build out based on our filter criteria. So first we're going to go to our CRM section and jump down to our lists. You'll see all of your previously imported lists here. When you're ready to make one, we'll just click on Create List. We'll want to make this a contact-based list. I'm going to call this our test list for Orum. You can put a description in here. We're also going to want to typically set this as an active list. And we'll do this because the filters we're going to use are typically going to have some sort of flow associated, so that when we're dispositioning inside of Orum, that can make changes to the list so that we're not recalling prospects, after we've talked to them. So if you have a static list, this list never changes. Always need to make sure we're using an active list when we're calling. So once we come into our list, you have the freedom to pretty much use any filters that you normally would. A lot of the ones that reps use are going to be under your contact properties. So we might use different things like the prospect job title, for example. We might want to specify specific titles that we have. Another option is maybe we want to use certain industries. We can select those there. We can do personas, any fields that you really have on your contact records to filter down and add the fields that you need. So I know one common one as well might be contact owner. We can go ahead and select just ourselves if we needed to, and then pull in that list that we have. So another filter that is going to be important is typically going to be the lead status. This could change depending on the org and how you're filtering them out, but often we're going to have a feedback loop. So when we're dispositioning, it's updating the lead status or the contact status, which is going to remove them from the list. So this is going to be underneath our contact properties. We'll have our lead status or our contact status that we use. I'm going to go ahead and pull in the lead status here, and we can do any of is new, is in progress, or just a couple of examples here. So what this will do is if we have any flows where it changes them from new or in progress to open deal or not interested, and we use a filter on here, this filter will automatically remove them. So then once we've added all of our filters on, we can go ahead and save that list. So our list is processing here. All right, and after our list is done processing, we can go ahead and log in with HubSpot, choose our account. And then to bring that list in, we'll go to our dialer tab, and we'll have our list section here. So we have a couple of the options here. We can either pull in all of our do call tasks, or we can pull in any list that we've created. So now that list that I just created inside of here, let's see, we can go ahead and pull that list in. This section is going to be on adding our prospects into sequences and creating the sequences so that we can filter to them inside of Orum. So when we're inside of HubSpot, we are going to go to our automations, and we're going to pull into our sequence tab here. So if you have any existing sequences, you can go ahead and select that one to add in, or if you need, you can create a new sequence. We'll go ahead and create from scratch. And this one, and then we can just select the steps that we want. So on this one, I'm going to go ahead and just add a couple call steps in. One important thing to remember is that we can't filter by the sequence name, but we can filter by the task title inside of here. So one thing we recommend is that you do have the ability to filter is you can name your task title the name of the sequence. And if you also want to filter by call step, then you can add the call step into the task title. So we'll call this our test sequence. And then what I would typically do is we'll go ahead and we'll pull this in. We'll rename our task title with the sequence. And if you do want to filter by calls, we can call this call 1. You can also add any priorities or queues if you have those in there. Go ahead and create that. We'll just add one more call step in here. We'll do the same thing. Test sequence, and we'll call this call 2. So once we've set up our sequence and we're ready for this to go, we can go ahead and save this. And now we're ready to add prospects into it. So adding the prospects in, you can go through your normal process. We can go in and contacts, we could pull in from a list that we have, add those contacts into sequence as needed. So we can go ahead and add our prospects that we have here into sequence. So I'm just going to select a couple from my list here. We have our enroll in sequences. I'm going to go ahead and choose that sequence that we just created a few minutes ago. We'll continue with enroll our contact. All right, so we can either go through our list of contacts, we can bulk enroll from there. Also, if you're prospecting one by one, we can go directly through the contact page and we can add the prospect to the sequence. So we're going to go ahead and enroll Parker in our test sequence that we just created here. We'll go ahead and hit start sequence. So successfully enrolled in it. So since we have that first call step being due immediately, now what we can do is we can come over to our test sequence. If you just created it, you may need to refresh your page just to pull in that new one. And now if we come into here, we can do our test. I'm sorry, we can do our I'll do call tasks, which is going to pull in all of our sequences, tasks that we have across all sequences. So this should have Parker inside of here in a sequence. So you'll remember that in that first step, we renamed the task title to have the name of the sequence inside of it. And we do this so that you can use it to filter by that task title to get to the name of your sequence. So if you haven't done this already, to filter by a field, you do have to have that field mapped in here. So to do that, we'll go to our profile at the top, click on our personal settings, and then inside of here, we'll have the option to add the task title. You can leave it towards the end since we're not viewing it, we just want to filter by it. Go ahead and hit save to bring in that field. And then we just need to refresh our list here to bring in those new fields that we mapped in. So we'll just want to make sure after we map it in, we have our task title here. Sometimes it will take a second to sync up. All right. So once we've mapped it in, we should see our task title here, and then we can even see that that first call step we have is showing up inside of our task title view. So once we have that pulled in, now to filter by that sequence, we'll come to our filters. We can search for the task title in our filters here. If you hit the drop down, it's going to give you a list of all the names of it. So if you just called this the Orum test sequence and we didn't include the call step, this will include all contacts that are in that sequence that are on a do call task. If we do have them numbered like this, they'll show up as separate tasks. So if we have 5 call steps and we want to call them all, we will have to select each call step. So we'll go ahead and select call step number 1. And then we can go ahead and apply that filter. And that is going to bring us to that new contact that we just enrolled in the sequence here. So once we've brought in our call tasks, right now we're calling across like the one sequence, or if we're calling from a list, a lot of times you're going to want to customize which pieces of information are mapped in inside. So you're going to use this information for a couple things. At the top of your list, you're going to want all the relevant information that you have for your calls. So any prospect information, any of your note fields, email addresses, things like that. And then we're also going to want to map in any of the fields that we want to use for filtering. So if you use things like the task title, which we covered for filtering for sequences, you might want to filter by campaign. If you have a really large list, you might want to separate it maybe regionally within a certain territory, or even by like the campaign name, industry messaging, persona messaging. So to adjust this view, and what you'll see, you can have a preview of what it'll look like once it's mapped in. So we can see all of our fields here. And this is what it's going to look like when we're into a call with the prospect. If we want to adjust that view, we'll come up to the top. We'll click on our personal settings, and this is going to give us all those fields that we have mapped in and the order that they're mapped in. So typically what I like to do is bring in the most important ones. We want their name at the front. I usually want the company name. We'd want the job title. Anything you might use for filtering. So if lead status is used for filtering, task title for filtering, we want to move those towards the end. So we'll bring in our notes closer to the front. We'll bring any queue filters that we have down here. We want our call history closer to the front, which is going to give us all of our notes on previous calls. And once we're ready with that, we'll go ahead and hit the save. And then we can close out of this. Again, we're going to need to refresh to update all the fields that we just changed in. Give it a second because sometimes it does take a second to make the updates. And usually after a refresh or two, we should see everything in the same order that we just mapped it in. So that's going to be the view that we have when we hit the drop down in the order that they're inside of here. Once you have those in, you can use the filters for any of the ones that we put at the end. And then we'll have all of our customized views at the front here. You can also rearrange for parallel dialing. If you want to leave this view for when you're in a call, you can adjust the view that you have while parallel dialing in the preview. To do that, we'll click on our show and hide columns at the front. So if there's, again, those filter fields that we don't really need, we just want them on that page, we could always unselect those to remove them. So lead task queue, and that's going to update what we have displayed across the top here. So it won't change what we have once we actually get into a call, but that way while we're calling, we have just the relevant information highlighted in those columns for us. So specifically in HubSpot, a lot of times we do want to drop calls in sequences based on the specific step that they're in inside of the sequence. So there's a really easy way to do this. You're going to pair the filtering of the task title if you put the call steps in with the voicemail that you're going to record. So for this, first thing we would do is we would record the voicemail that we want. Let's go ahead and record voicemail. You can name this, so I'll call this our test sequence. And we'll call this call 1. So once you've named the voicemail step, we can go ahead and hit record. It's recording the voicemail now. So, hey, this is Dan calling from Orum. Shot you an email last week. I was following up on that. We help reps get into more conversations over the phone. Give me a call back. We can talk and see if we can help your team out. So once we've recorded our voicemail, we can listen back to it. If we like the way it sounds, we can go ahead and hit save. And so now anybody that we call, when we connect with a voicemail, we're going to automatically drop this voicemail for you. A couple things to note, we only drop it one time per prospect. So if you do have contacts like this one where we have 2 phone numbers for them, we will only drop it on the first voicemail that we interact with. And so you do want to make sure that you have these sorted. So if you're going to have multiple voicemails, maybe we always want to leave it on the mobile phone. So we're going to put the mobile phone in the first position. Next step is going to be matching the voicemail with the step in the sequence. And so if you titled those task titles in your sequence, all you need to do is come to your filters, go to your task title, and then we'll select the same call step that goes with that voicemail. So now I'll filter down to Orum test sequence call 1. Got Parker here. And now while we're calling through this list of everybody that's in call step number 1 that we filter to, we're going to automatically be dropping that voicemail for them. All right, for reps that are calling from lists, a lot of times we use the lead status that we talked about earlier to remove contacts from the list based on a connect. So your managers may create a flow that will automatically update the lead status, which will update your list for you. If they haven't done this, depending on your HubSpot instance, we may need to do this manually. So if we are in a call with any of our contacts and we do get a connect, you have the ability to update the lead status directly inside of Orum. So let's say we talk to Canon here, we have a call, we schedule a meeting. We know that if we change it from new to an open deal, then that is going to automatically remove them from the filter inside of our list, which will have them fall out of it. So you can make any of these changes directly inside here in Orum by just clicking on the field and updating the lead status here, which will automatically save back into your HubSpot list, which will help you remove them from the list so we're not calling them again tomorrow. All right, when we're going through sequence tasks, in a lot of sales engagement platforms, there is automation where it automatically will end the sequence based on the connected disposition that you have. So with HubSpot, it depends on the package that you have. So you might find yourself on a team where we are using Sales Hub Pro. With that, we don't have any automation to end sequences based on the dispositions. It's not an automation that's enabled on the HubSpot side. So if we do have a contact that we talk to, we have a good conversation, and we need to remove them from the sequence, this will have to be done inside of HubSpot. To do this, it's really fast. You're talking to Parker, we hang up the phone, you're going to have the HubSpot profile or contact record right through this HubSpot logo. So we can just go ahead and click on that. So once we open up the contact record, that's going to take us to the contact that's enrolled. We should have our sequence activity down here. You can just come down here, unenroll from sequence. So you do need to make sure that we pause on every connected call that we have, and if they do need to be removed, we need to unenroll. Otherwise, if we just disposition the call and move on, they will continue in the sequence, getting emails and then the subsequent follow-up calls. All right, after a call is logged inside of Orum, we are automatically pushing the call disposition back into HubSpot as well as the call recording. So as long as you have calls that are being recorded, once the call is logged, if you ever want to go back and listen to it, you can just open up the contact record on it to find them. So we'll look at the example of David, who has some calls made previously. We click on David's HubSpot logo, and we'll see a list of the activities. And you will find the call will be listed underneath the calls. You'll have the recording here. You can expand it to see any of the call details that are mapped in on it. If we want to listen to the call, we can just listen to that live right through Orum, or we can also open up the call recording link in HubSpot that'll take us to the Orum recording that we have.